went to vote, but someone has already voted in his name. Let me go back to you quickly, Komla Kluche, who is still with us on Skype. Komla, briefly, if you can just, in wrapping up, tell us about the key things that you mentioned. You say that the EC, the Peace Council in their statement is about to address the media, but are these concerns they are saying has affected voting?
Hello, Martin. Can you hear me?
Yes, Komla, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you. It's quite faint, but if you were asking me,
yes, very briefly, I wanted you to tell us whether this has affected voting.
Yes, absolutely. The key things that the Peace Council has identified in terms of their monitoring, the men on the ground, there are 8 things that it stands out. One, that after a slow start, generally they have described the process as okay. But I think the most worrying thing for them has to do, for instance, with the third point where they say that the number of incidences bordering on voting procedures not being adhered to, such as the absence of manual verification mechanism, that's the using of party agents as polling officials, wearing of party paraphernalia, etc. And they have gone ahead to even state the areas within which this was found. For instance, with this particular point, they point out Suhum Post Office A, Dome Kwabinya Taifa Community Center A. Then
thank you very much, Komla Kluche.
Advantage of certain preferential treatment to the vulnerable, persons. Example, the LA primary exam, Nima Sunsunatu Line Mosque and all that. One of them.
All right, so yes, Komla was just giving us that statement from the Peace Council, and they are about to address the press. So while the time ticks away, we will bring you what exactly the Peace Council has been saying. This is still your election command center, and we're swinging straight to the command center where we have Johnny Hughes, my colleague, who has a number of guests to let us know what their thoughts have been so far on the process, which started 7 a.m. across the country. Johnny Hughes. Well, it is 4 o'clock. Good afternoon to you, to the team there.
We're monitoring proceedings as they go on from north, south, east, and west. This indeed is your election command center. We are the specialists, and we promise we're delivering, we're bringing you live coverage from across the 275 constituencies in the Republic of Ghana, where we're all gathering today as a people to elect a president and some 275 parliamentarians. I'm sure you've been following the issues. We'll put together some specialists to discuss one or two of them while we inch closer to the close of polls. I have here with me Professor Peter Cortes, Head of Economics Department, University of Ghana, and Economics ESA as well. Prof, welcome. Thank you very much. And Godwin Adangwene is Senior Lecturer at the University of Professional Studies in Accra. Welcome, sir. And Dr. Francis Boateng Jenim is Director of Institute of Research, CSIR. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Well, so I'm sure you've been monitoring what's going on. I'll start with you, Prof. There's been issues of persons attempting to snatch ballot boxes. Kodeo's Kofi Ahin says it is abnormal that after 20 years of practicing this thing we call democracy, we still have people thinking in that direction. Your thoughts?
Well, I think so far the process for me has been very good. We've had quite a good improvement over what it used to be in previous years. We live in a human society, and what we've seen is snatching of ballot boxes is an isolated case. We've only heard of one, and I don't think we've heard of other incidents of such a nature. So I think we've come very far, and there are a few hitches here and there, but I believe as Ghanaians we should be proud that so far this is phase 1. We've managed phase 1 pretty well, considering the process, the start of the process, challenges with EC and all the stakeholders concerned. If you look at it, I think we've come really far. What we should guard against is when we move into phase 2, and that is the counting and the collation process, that we don't get into problems like we did in the previous elections. And I think Ghanaians,
when
we can
you say
pat ourselves
guard
on the back.
against, what exactly are you talking about? For example, the media is covering, Kode has been issuing statements, issues been doing, periodic announcements to the press to tell them what's happening when responding to some of the issues. There's a situation room set up by the Peace Council and all of that. So what exactly do you mean when you say we should guard against some of those things?
Well, you realize that we spent 8 months trying to contest the outcome of the elections. Some came with all kinds of allegations, pink sheet issues to do with numbers being flipped over, and many others. This is another process we've put in place. Right. I believe it's a credible process, but let this process work. When people win or lose, once they know the process is credible, even if you've lost, you're quite confident, you're quite happy. Although you've lost honorably. But where people lose and they think that the process is not fair, then that's where the challenge is. We speak about peace all the time, but we don't talk about fairness. Okay. I think we should also hammer on the fairness, that when it's fair, anybody who loses will sit back and say, look,
fairness on whose part?
On everybody's part, on all the stakeholders, on their part. Those snatching ballot boxes could be doing the dirty work of anybody. Okay. It could be the incumbent, it could be the opposition or anybody. So fairness on every stakeholder involved, on the media, reportage, the election officials, even people voting themselves. Every stakeholder that is involved in the process should ensure that there is fairness throughout the process.
Godwin Adewini, there have been issues also, for example, in the Okankwe South constituency, where the police had a tip-off about some people printing accreditation cards. And I know that wherever the Electoral Commission prints anything of such nature, it has heavily guarded police presence there. Now, when the police moved in, there was nothing of the sort there. I'd like you to juxtapose that and perhaps add that to what we just saw, where someone went to the polling station to go and vote, and only to realize that someone had voted in his name. Your thoughts about that as well?
I think the important thing here is that at least there was a tip-off, but it appears to me to be a false alarm that was, at least to the extent that nothing was found. But you should expect some of such things to happen. But normally the question is, to what extent have such incidents, how have they affected?
Must they occur at all?
He said we live in a human society, and you cannot expect 100% perfection. So these things will happen all right. But in order to move on, we evaluate their entire effect upon the process. Talking about somebody going to the polling station and then only to see that someone else has, his name has been ticked. I think that is the information. Yeah. Well, this could be an error. We don't have the details, but imagine that you get to the polling station, the biometric machine verifies your finger, and then you move to the next person who then looks at your name and then takes it. Is it possible the person could have taken someone else's name? If the problem has to be taken, is it possible that rather than taking the actual person who has been verified name, you rather take someone else's name? I
know, I voted, and I know that when you get to the polling station, you take your ID card to the first gentleman or the first lady, whoever it is, and then you get it checked. He will tell you which side of the register it is. So usually they say page 44 left or page 23 right, depending on where they tell you. So you see your photograph, you see your name and everything, and then they tick against your name. And